Welcome to the Comics Asylum podcast, where we explore the world of comic books, movies, television, and pop culture. My name is Steve Bino, and this week, Walter Durajlija of Big B Comics stops by to chat about the comic book industry from a retailer's point of view. All right, welcome to Comics Asylum. I'm here with Walter Durajlija from Big B Comic Books in Hamilton and the International Comic Exchange. Did I get that right?
You did.
All right, excellent. So I guess the acronym is ICE.
It is. ICE.
Awesome. Excellent. Cool as ice. So I want to welcome Walt to the Asylum. And how's everything been for 2020 with you?
Been an eventful year, Steve, but pushing through. We're almost near the end. Like I said, a lot of things happened this year that nobody expected, but and it's we'll talk about it a little later, but the results were also things that we didn't expect. You know, things are turning out way different than we thought they'd turn out when this thing all started.
Yeah, for sure. I guess the biggest hurdle would have been the lockdown. And how did you guys adjust to not having people be able to come into your store?
Yeah, that was in end of March, April, into May. We had roadside pickup, curbside pickup. We did that. We also did deliveries. So we dropped books off people at their door. And those are pretty well the only two avenues that we had physically at our shop. We were able to drive books out to people and products, and people were able to come tap on the front door, and we would come out and give them their bag and stuff. So, but obviously you're limited to maybe 10% of the economic activity you're used to doing that way.
And what kind of initiatives did you guys put in place to kind of generate more customers coming into your shop, or even to maintain the link and the bonds that you guys have had with previous customers?
Yeah, well, like I said, we offered the roadside pickup, curbside pickup. I always get that wrong. And we offered the delivery. And Dylan, who runs our store, was doing a lot of correspondence via email, posting things on our Facebook, on our Instagram, things like that, just communicating to the public what's going on. And we also did a thing in Hamilton. We did it was a comic care package. So what we did is we bundled up 12 comic books, just generic older comic books, one-offs. We made sure it wasn't like part 3 of a 5-part story. And anybody that signed up for it in Hamilton would get them delivered for free. So it was like kids, the kids are going squirrely at home. So we came up with this comic care package for any parents that want to sign up. And I think we had like 350 deliveries. We had to cut it off after 3 days because we ran out of books. It was like 4,000 comics, right?
Wow.
And so we go, oh, you know what? This will last us all summer. And like literally within 3 days, we had 350 signups, and then we had about a 4-day period where we were delivering to about 90 homes each day, and the community liked that. So there's good word of mouth about the shop. We were trying that, and we were hoping obviously just to keep the name alive and keep and do something also positive for people in lockdown and people that couldn't get out and about to get stuff. Right. So that went well. But other than that, really, Steve, not much locally. Like when you talk about our online business, that took off. That went crazy. Right. But in terms of Hamilton in store, we were very limited.
And the industry's had, I would say, a couple of seismic shifts due to COVID, and it's reverberating through DC with what their parent company wants to do and kind of restructure. How has the change in distribution channels, as well as DC canceling a whole bunch of titles, affected the retailers?
Yeah, once things got back up and running, all those changes started to happen, and they sucked, right? Just in terms of the work that goes on at a comic book shop, in terms of what your manager or your order people that order the books for you. It's so much easier going to a Diamond, which is one distributor. It's one effort, it's one task, it's one delivery. It's and then for DC to split and get an independent distributor, that's now two tasks, right? And so the amount of work that created, the amount of uncertainty it created, it wasn't positive. It was a thing that we didn't want, but it's a thing we had to live with, and it's a thing we definitely did in a hurry. We jumped on it, and then they gave you 2 or 3 choices on who to go with, because they had a Montreal-based distributor, they had an American-based distributor, and of course, our luck, we picked the one that after about 6 weeks went under or folded, and then we had to switch over to the other one. So, yeah, that part of it is, thankfully, the books kept coming, but it was just an extra hurdle to jump through to get the books. Like it was more work for us in terms of ordering. And then when they started knocking titles down, good and bad. And I got to be careful how I say that. Comic shops sometimes tend to be optimistic when they order, and there was a lot of DC titles that weren't performing. And DC, seeing that, they cut those titles. They went to their core, which is great for, mass sales, like your Batman and your Detective and all that kind of stuff. But so it made it easier on whether you should pick, I'm making up a title, but, Blue Beetle, I know he wasn't around, but, should I order 4 extra copies of Blue Beetle for the shelf? That decision was taken away from me because they cut those titles, right? So you could have either done yourself some harm or you could have done yourself some good, but that was taken off the table. You were stuck with kind of the core titles that were easier to pick, I guess. The best way would be is you're prone to make less mistakes with a smaller group of better performing titles as a comic shop, but you're robbing the end user of choice.
And does that play into the independent market as well too?
In what way?
In terms of what you guys would then be able to order from them?
Well, I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question.
So for independent publishers.
Okay, publishers. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sorry for not making that clear. But for independent publishers, then does that then give the comic book store more leeway to order more copies from them because they want to have more product for their customers, or does that shut that down as well too because everyone is just trying to be a little bit more safe?
Again, it's a dangerous game, right? Because now you want to have, maybe your new this week section has I'm making up a number, 80 slots in it or something like that, and DC cuts out 10, 15 titles. You might want to up 10, 15 titles on the independent side. But most comic shops, they tend not to do so well on independents. Like the independent titles just don't sell as well. And there's a little bit of, we're a little gun shy when we're ordering extra copies of independent. So I don't think for us it transferred into now we're going to go higher and harder on the independents. I don't think that we did that at all, which again is hurting the selection for the customer coming in, right? So yeah, I would say no. I would say we did not definitely order. We didn't have like a plan. Okay, now we're going to order more independents.
It's interesting because with the supply chain changing and the market in flux, to me, especially because you're kind of seeing the reverberations of AT&T's decisions with HBO Max and what it's doing to the film industry, and theaters are, theater owners are in a panic as well as certain creators.
There
is that tectonic shift also filtering down to the comic book store? Because I can imagine that the prospects of survival for a lot of shops, especially shops that aren't huge or have branched out into collectibles and are almost like brand names, such as, Big B, Silver Snail, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It must be very uncertain times moving into next year.
It is. What I think COVID did is, and other people have said it, it's expedited a process that was already underway. People thought 2, 3, 4 years, but now it's this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the trend was there to begin with, but I think I might have, privately, you and I might have talked about this one day a while ago, Steve, is local comic book shops. I think I read somewhere that graphic novels for the first time have surpassed in bookstores like Barnes and Nobles and Chapters and stuff, have surpassed comic book shops cumulatively. Like at the end of the year, more graphic novels have sold at chain box stores than they have at comic shops, right? And so the shift, that actual balance now is shifting. So publishers, their biggest customers are now box stores. They're not local comic shops anymore. And I've always thought of it as local comic shops are run by sole proprietors. There's 2,500 of us. I'm making up a number in North America. I'm going to go out on a limb and say 500 of them are run progressively well. 2,000 of them struggle week to week. The sole proprietor is tired. They're stuck at the counter because of economics, can't hire help. Don't get me wrong, there is tons of ambition, but there's no energy to initiate the ambition. So you get decisions that aren't based on what's best for the collecting and entertainment community, the consumers that come into your store consuming that stuff. Those decisions are not made to what's best for them long term. And that's what the publishers want. Decisions are made on how do I pay my rent next week? I'm not sure about this new comic coming out, so I'm going to get the 9 for the people that ordered it, and I'm not going to get any for the shelf because I'm scared, right? And these cumulatively, when you have 2,000 plus people making decisions like that, it's terrible for the publisher. The publisher isn't being well served by an organization of sole proprietors that are struggling to survive, right? In any other kind of model where you're getting product to the end user, like a bookstore or like magazines at Shoppers Drug Mart or whatever, it's over order, just tons. Just get everything out in front of the people, make it in a nice, clean environment, make it accessible, make it off the highway, make it on the way home, make it, put it in front of them in the mall. And at least then, when something sells, you'll know that you're optimizing those sales because those products are put in front of potential customers at almost a saturation point. You can't say that about comic books. It's almost the opposite for comic books. Comic books are, most of the shops are still tucked away in a corner of a city somewhere that isn't frequented a lot because the rents are cheaper. Most titles aren't ordered to the point where I know some comic shop owners, if I sell out by Thursday, it's great. That means I ordered right. Well, yeah, for you, maybe, but not for the end user and not for the industry as a whole. If you know what I don't know.
Yeah, no, I totally get it.
Right. That's kind of what's going on. So I'm looking at it from perspective of DC and how can they support non-organized organization like that? Like how can they help us, right? Because we're not helping ourselves, but it's not really our fault because the economics of a comic shop aren't there to propagate, to push products. The economics of a comic shop are to sell through, right? So
yeah, exactly. And I'm just now thinking about if you're dependent on a certain amount of titles, and I know there've been issues in the past where there may have been too many titles and you can't return them, right? So you're stuck with what you've ordered. but then there's also that fine balance with with a company like DC, and if Marvel goes the same way and they slash their titles, they may not be producing enough for the comic book stores to survive, but they're probably producing enough to keep their IPs alive to then flip into movies. And there's the delicate balance of, you got to maintain the places where the people can get those stories that then want to go to the theaters to watch them, as live action fare.
I remember early 2000s, 05, 03. I don't remember exactly when, but let's say 03, 04, 05. Graphic novels was just kind of coming into a good thing, being a good thing. But coming out of the 90s, graphic novels weren't a thing, right? So comic shop owners really didn't buy into graphic novels per se. Some of the progressive ones in the big cities did, but most of them didn't. And then I remember every year, about 4 or 5 years, I don't exactly know how much, but Diamond had a Christmas return program. So come October, you can order as many graphic novels as you want, 100% return guaranteed returnability, right? So we took advantage of that. We ordered tons. We ordered, whatever I forget what the titles were, but I'm sure Watchmen was one of them, and all that kind of stuff. And thinking, oh my God, Steve, come January, there's hardly anything to return.
Right.
Holy crap, this stuff sells. But we would never, ever have ordered that if we were afraid that we were going to eat it, right? But so I'm thinking, and the reason why graphic novels exploded, I honestly think, was because of that program. Because just the nature of the local comic book shop. Now, you're not talking about a $2 expenditure like a comic now. You're talking about a $12 expenditure on a graphic novel. So it's like, I might get one, right? And if it sells out on that weekend after you get it, or the weekend after, you're going to be ecstatic, but you're not going to go out and buy another one. You're going to think that was it, just kind of. But that return program was just so effective that the second year we doubled it, and the third year I think we doubled it again. And then once that return program was like the new Walking Dead graphic novels coming out, we would get 50 copies, right? Because by then, our graphic novel consumers coming into the store were hooked. They were consuming graphic novels. But I guess my point is, could something like that work with comics, right? Where Diamond and thing, especially on new titles with new creators, something that they want to back. I think the model that they use right now, honestly, is those variants, right? It's almost a way for you to order 50 copies, because you might order 12, but you're going to get, I don't know, making up a number, $100 for that 1 in 50. So you up your order to 50 to get it, and then you technically have stock, right? I don't know if that's designed by DC to make sure you stock that book, but I think it would have been more effective if they really thought a creative team and a new character was going to hit, that they supported us with returnability. I thought, because it worked for the graphic novels, is my point.
And is that program still in place for graphic novels?
I don't think so. No, I think it disappeared a decade ago. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was a thing at the beginning. We were looking at it. Should we do this? I think we should. Because we literally had one of those. I think it might have had like 6 cubby holes for graphic novels. That was our graphic novel section. Maybe a selection of 10 unique graphic novels. I think in our shop right now we might have 5,000 unique graphic novels, like unique title issues, and some of them are 10, 20 deep, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
interesting.
Yeah.
And so just moving forward, because we don't have things like conventions where you can have those, I guess those bonanza weekends for stores, right?
Yeah.
You can go to something like Fan Expo, you go to the Hamilton show, you can travel all over the country if you really want to, where you can move a lot of your inventory.
Right.
What do you see for comic book stores moving ahead in the absence of those kind of events, with the backlog of material that they have now? and then also the change in distribution that's going to be coming up next year.
Yeah. I think the comic book con matured over the last 30 years as well, 50 years since San Diego. Comic book cons were tough slogging for most comic shops. They were they became marginal places to make money, in the sense that they became liquidation places for overstock for a lot of people. They became very expensive to attend. They took away from the weekend at the store in a way, right? So I don't know. From what I've been talking to other shops, is not very many of us missed the cons this year, because we were surprised with how well the stores were doing without cons. It's like, don't forget, people can't go to cons either, so they're coming to the shop, right? So we kind of had a reverse tide effect as well. These people that would save up all summer to go to Fan Expo, and they might not have entered into a comic store in July and August, saving their money for Fan Expo. Okay, maybe they were getting their Batman and Spider-Man books, but they weren't doing any extra expenditures because they were saving for the con, right? Now they're not saving for the con. They're going to spend that at the comic shop, right? So the cons are tricky. The cons are tricky. I know for us personally, we never really missed them. I found, Steve, that personally, we also sell back issues, and my manager called me out on this. Dylan called me out on this a couple of years ago, actually. He says, "Walt, you're starving the store of good back issues," and I was, because I was hoarding for the con, right?
Right.
So come June, July, I have a couple months to get ready for Fan Expo. Well, I want to show really well at Fan Expo. I want to be the king of the hill. I want to be the guy with the best books. So a collection comes in. I kind of put them aside for Fan Expo, because I'm spending all that money on tables. I want to have good sales at Fan Expo. So it was kind of a rigged sales number at Fan Expo, because I was cheating the shop of those books, right? So I never really looked at it that way until a couple of years ago, and I was called on it, and I go, "You know what? Right. So I still say cons are tricky. Cons can be a great place. Cons are a great place to if you're good at what you do. Cons are a great place to meet people and make new customers, for sure, especially on secondhand stuff, on collectibles, right? Because they get to know you, they buy something off you, they'll come down to your shop. Maybe when it's time to sell, they'll approach you as one of the people that they offer the stuff to. A whole bunch of good things come from cons, right? But the economic model of the big cons were that they became very expensive as well. And so it's a mixed blessing. I think it's not all negative for comic shops that there were no cons this year, believe it or not. I think it returned some people into a more regular comic shop mode. And if you ask me if they were there, I would have went to them and I would have done well, but they weren't there, and we did fine.
Right. And considering, let's move away from the monthly issues, the new ones,
Mm-hmm.
and let's move into the vintage books.
Right.
And you are running ICE,
Yep.
and I've been on taking a look at some of the collection that you have up there, and you've got some dynamite books. Is that market kind of getting more energy with the uncertainty with the new monthly books that are coming out?
Yeah. A couple of things surprised us this year. Oftentimes, I did a podcast once earlier this year. We talked about whether the different type of people that buy comics, right? There's a pure collector, and there's a pure consumer, and then there's everybody in between. I know lots of pure consumers. I know those Wednesday guys, and it's mostly guys. They come in, they cannot wait to read that next chapter of the story. They go right to their act. They grab the first one. It could have 17 bends in it, Steve. They don't care, right? It's they're there to consume the content. That's all they're for. They have zero interest in collecting, right? Now they're in a box, and believe it or not, some of them have given when the boxes got too full, they've given us back to comics to give away to kids, right? But then there are the collectors that we're going to talk about, and some of them don't read comics. No interest in reading comics. They collect for the value. They collect to make money, or they collect to collect, even just to collect, right? Just because they're a collector, but they don't read them. Oh man, I really need issue number 81 of Spidey. Then I'll have my whole run from 70 to 100, right? But when they get it, they're not going to read it, and they've never read it, right? So that is kind of a unique. There's two unique polarizing views, but and there's a lot of people in between, in my point, and this degree of in between to the left and to the right of center is probably evenly distributed. I don't know, but to our surprise, back issue sales online absolutely took off. One reason you understand why, there's no cons. But the second reason we couldn't understand why is there was lockdown and people weren't working. So we thought the economics of it was gonna hurt collectibles. We thought the economics of the shutdown, we thought the economics of people not working, staying home, and going on CERB, we thought that was going to hurt, and it didn't. We knew that there would be pent-up demand, people couldn't go to cons, and so people are going to sit at home online and buy stuff. We just didn't know how much they could afford, and what they were spending way surpassed their expectations of what they would.
And I assume too, the reality of the situation is that there are a lot of people that have those books that want to move them because they need money too.
Right. Now that was the catch-22 though. A comic book shop would always have a steady stream of collections coming through over a year. Well, from middle of March into the fall, hardly anybody was bringing anything in because A, the lockdown at the beginning, and B, the nervousness of just, of a lot of people inviting you into their home to look at a collection or coming into the comic shop. Right. There's still people that, it's not a necessity for me to go there. I don't want to go there until this whole thing blows over, right? So what we found is it was a seller's market. We had an issue of trying to source stuff. We couldn't buy enough stuff. We could have done even better had we had access to purchase things. People weren't bringing stuff into the store. So we had, luckily, like I told you before, Mr. Hoarder here, we had all that convention stock that we were able now we don't have to go to a convention. So that became online stock, that became eBay stock, that became ICE stock. And that stuff was selling through beautifully at a consistent, strong pace all the way through. But the pipeline was getting shorter and shorter. Like, we were in danger, had nothing come in at all. We might be out of stuff to sell by now, right? So, but luckily things have been trickling in. So it's kind of, things are kind of starting to get back to normal now as we approach the new year. But there was an issue where we were for about a 6-month period, we were selling at a way stronger pace than we were taking in. So the second end for us is because we also consign, right? So luckily we were able to sign on a couple of really good consigners. So they kept our stock, because to the person going to our websites, they just see comics, right? So we were able to keep up the pace and keep up the quality and the quantity to a satisfactory level for us, thanks to consigners. If it wasn't for the consigners, we would have ran out a long time ago, because we were able to move books 10 times faster than we were able to take personally as a business, buy them outright, right?
Right.
So, yeah, but it's been crazy how strong the collectibles market has been online since COVID.
And if someone is looking to, either augment their collection or begin to dabble into back issues and get into the premier books, what would your advice be? Maybe characters to look at, specific issues, specific runs, even.
Um, I read a book once. It said, I think it's called Skin in the Game. It's a new book. It's like, so technically you shouldn't give advice that you don't take yourself. Is the catch, right? Because if
Right.
you have no skin in the game, it costs you nothing to make a mistake. So,
True.
so I'll try to stick with the stuff I believe in. So I'll try to be true to the book at least. What I do is I kind of develop what everybody should probably develop a little checklist. So, and as many points on that checklist as you can check off, that becomes a better and better investment. So the number one driver of value is character introduction. Right? Character introduction is this book contains the first appearance of Batman. That's an important book. Everybody wants it. It's worth $1 million, right? Because it's scarce. The second, probably most important driver in comics right now is the cover appeal. Because when you're talking about investing in comics, Steve, you're generally going to end up encapsulating it and grading it. So when you encapsulate a comic, it's weird because a comic book, think about stamp, a coin, a sports card. Okay, you encapsulate it like those things. They're really expensive. Honus Wagner, Wayne Gretzky, you name it, right? 1948 silver dollar. I don't even know what the years are, which ones are important, but some Queen Victoria stamp. What you pay for is what you see. The collectible that you are paying for, you see with your eyes. That is the value right there. When you and I go out and split, and we give $50,000 each to co-own a Pep Comics number 22 from 1941 or whatever it's from, we're buying that because that's the first appearance of Archie Andrews. Right. Archie, of course, is massive. He's a massive pop culture phenomenon. But that was a backup story in that book. That was like near the end, 6-page backup story. He's nowhere to be seen on the cover, right? But here we are. We just spent $125,000, and we have like the Shield, patriotic hero on the front, beating up some Nazis, probably. I don't know. I forget what's on the cover. What we paid for is buried inside that we can't see. It's kind of an odd thing. Comics are the only, the value may be inside, but when you encapsulate it, you don't see what you paid for.
Well, remember, not to cut you off, but you remember in the 90s when I think the Spider-Man #1 came out and X-Men #1 came out with Jim Lee and McFarlane's runs on those books. Part of the boom was that people bought multiple copies because they bag one and read
the other.
And read the other one.
They bagged 49 every month. That's what they were doing back then. But covers, like a good battle cover. Well, like if you go into the horror books of the 1950s, a decapitation cover, a nasty, horror cover that's just nasty. Black Cat 50 with the guy's face melting. These are the books everybody wants. Good Girl art, Matt Baker drawing a very voluptuous, pretty girl on the cover. That's the one everybody wants. So that's probably the number 2 driver is covers. So if you get a first appearance of a character introduced, and then you get a good cover. Let me go back to the first appearance of the character. If the character is also on the cover, that's even better. Right. So, like I said, Pep 22, Strange Tales 110. Did you know Strange Tales 110, first Doctor Strange, is the only early Marvel key that doesn't have the hero on the cover? Like person.
I didn't know that. What
Yeah.
about what
Hulk,
about
Daredevil.
but what about I guess Wolverine? 181 is the big one,
He was on the cover. Yeah.
but he showed up in the last
Panel.
page, the last panel of 180.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess he's the one, the exception to the rule now, right?
Well, I was just talking about the launch of Marvel, the 1963.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay.
Up until Daredevil 1 type thing, the kind of classic Amazing Fantasy 15, Hulk 1, Fantastic Four,
Right.
Tales of Suspense 39 with Iron Man, all those books, Journey into Mystery 83 with Thor.
With Thor.
All of them had the cover, the character that they introduced on the cover, except Strange Tales 110, which introduced Doctor Strange, and he wasn't on the cover. So that's important. And then you have scarcity is important, Steve. Scarcity is important. And then you have scarcity of grade, which, because a lot of comics aren't scarce, especially comics maybe that most younger people will collect of say, the last, since 1990, let's say. The comics may not be scarce, but they may be scarce in grade, if that makes sense. So the best example is New Mutants 98, its first appearance of Deadpool, right? There are, I don't know, Steve, there might be 4,000 copies at 9.8. 9.8 is a really high grade. It's like, almost perfect.
Right.
And that book can trade upwards of $1,000 at 9.8, which is really good for a book that plentiful. But there are about 11 copies at 9.9. That book is a $20,000 book at 9.9, right? Because you're getting an iconic character, first appearance, he's on the cover, the cover's pretty good, but you're also getting scarcity in terms built into the grade that you get, right? So I mean, again, here are all these checklists. Is it a battle cover? Check it off. Is it, like I said, a first appearance? Is it there? I mean, I guess I should probably make one of these lists, shouldn't I?
I think that might be something you should look at.
Yeah, I think I should. Kind of like a checklist where guys walk around the convention going, let me get my pencil out. See what I but yeah, so the thing though is what you and I as kind of old timers, because we're kind of Bronze Age guys, right? Yeah. What I've noticed over the last 5 or 6 years is there's a super active collecting market for books from 2008 up, right? Miles Morales is a perfect example. The one, what's the girl that's going to take over as Black Panther now?
Oh, Shuri.
Shuri, right. So her first appearance was in one of the Black Panther issues maybe 8 years ago, right? These are the Clone Wars #1, because Clone Wars #1 was about 10 years ago or so, and that had the first appearance of a character that now is prominent in the Mandalorian TV series. So everybody wants that book. So it doesn't have to be an Amazing Fantasy 15. It doesn't have to be a Hulk 181 even. It can be books, because the young people that are in their 20s, let's say, they're very active on things that they like, right? They collect the things that they like. So we, as the generation before, we can't discount the values. I think that generations always think that the new stuff is crap. And, it's the old stuff that's good, right? It's like music or whatever.
Yeah, music, movies,
whatever. But the thing is this is what the younger people are consuming. And these are the characters that reverberate and touch nerves with them, right? Fantastic Four, who the hell are they? Grandma and Grandpa's, comics. They don't care about Fantastic Four. They care about Shuri. They care about Miles Morales. They care about
Miss Marvel.
Yeah, Miss Marvel. They care about things that are relevant to them right now. And these characters may have been introduced 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? And the cool part about that is comic distribution over those years, it was at its historic low. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of built-in scarcity, relative scarcity. So in 2011, you may have had 55,000 copies printed of that book with that character. I guarantee you, Hulk 181, it was Hulk probably wasn't even a good selling title. It probably had 400,000 copies printed. Archie in the late 1940s had 6 million copies printed. Right? There were just now obviously a lot of them got thrown away. But my point is, in the early 2010s, print runs weren't high. Other than let's say in Batman or something like that.
Right.
But so like I hate when somebody tells me, oh, everything is realized. I can't invest anymore. I can't guess right. Well, that's not true. Comic collecting is still super vibrant as of right now. And it's super vibrant really from the Golden Age to the Silver Age to the Bronze Age, through the Copper Age, and through the Now Age. There are active participants in it that are crazy. The only thing I would kind of caution for a new collector is, if you're collecting, buy with your heart. If you're investing, do a little homework. Like is the character relevant? Can the character, does he have or she have staying power? Are a bunch of these things checked off that I need to, kind of not assure, but kind of to hedge that I'll at least have some value of the stuff going forward. Because I don't think comic collecting is going away, is my point. I think it's just changing.
And you were mentioning scarcity being a major factor. I think with the low print runs of maybe a decade ago, and then the introduction of 5 or 6 variants, sometimes 7 variants on a book, there are some books that are pretty valuable right now because, there's a J. Scott Campbell cover, right?
Yeah.
I think that happened in a couple of the Spidey arcs.
Very much so.
If you have the regular cover, the A or B cover, the book's worth something. But if you have that special cover by a hot artist, that's what really skyrockets that book in terms of value.
Well, when we're going back to like that checklist, we didn't mention artists, but Dave Stevens, J. Scott Campbell, going back to Matt Baker. But then the reason why J. Scott Campbell covers are so good, it usually has to do with Mary Jane Foster, right? You hear me?
Yeah, pretty much. Mary Jane or Black Cat, for sure.
That's right. It has nothing to do with Spider-Man. But and that's because he threw women very provocatively and in a sexy way that guys liked, right? And
right.
Those covers became sought after for the art, for the voluptuous female art. But that, so that checks off covers, and then you get J. Scott Campbell, and that checks off an artist, and then you go Amazing Spider-Man, that checks off title, because if you're investing, you want to invest in a title that's heavily collected. And there's no heavier collected title in comics than Amazing Spider-Man, from beginning to end. Amazing Spider-Man is, probably double the next most collected title. And that might be like Batman or X-Men or something like that. But Amazing Spider-Man just blows everybody away. So if you can stick to, I always say that, say somebody wanted the Obama cover.
Right.
I think more people prefer the Spider-Man cover than the Savage Dragon cover.
Mm-hmm.
Because Savage Dragon is an image title of a character that nobody really cares about. I'm not saying nobody really, relative to Spider-Man, right? So if you're going to have one keepsake from that Obama election, it would have been the Amazing Spider-Man cover, because that checks off, the association to a very collective cover. So you're embedded in something that a lot of people collect to begin with. So when it comes time to sell down the road, you have that protection of it being embedded in a very collective title, right? So the demand will be there more so than more of a obscure title that not as many people collect. So.
And not to dig too far into the weeds, but would the price variance, a Canadian price variance, would that alter anything, or does that not really affect the
Well,
major?
people manufacture. It's funny. You almost manufacture scarcity as collectors, right?
Right.
We look for scarcity when it's not there, and I've been proven wrong 100 times. Because I was 15 years ago, I was telling people, guys, that's 35-cent Star Wars. It's just a sticker. It's the same book. Why are you paying 5 times more or 10 times more than you would for a regular one? Since then, it's now 2,000 times more than the regular one. Like it's just done nothing but
Wow.
go up, right? So obviously nobody listens to me, which is probably a good thing. But 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 that's scarcity. That's manufactured scarcity. That's collectors differentiating the price sticker because one has 1/100th or whatever it is of the availability. So with the Canadian price variance, the same thing. Canadian price variance are only sold in Canada. So if we use just rough math, 1/10 of the available copies, because Canada roughly the market is roughly 1/10 of the American market, right? So, and oddly enough, as Canadians, who wants it more is the Americans, right?
Mm, that's right.
And
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes
yeah,
sense.
and who gets one almost every time they buy a collection is the Canadians, right? So we 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 are sitting in a favorable position with the Canadian price variance, right? Because that is a manufactured differentiated scarcity that's kind of, I'm not going to say made up because it's obviously there, but it's made important by the collecting community. Like
Right.
they put a certain level of importance on the fact that this Canadian price variant is about 1/10 of the copies of the American one. So I want this one more.
And I assume there's probably like a cool factor to it too. Like, like when you get iconic movie posters, but it's like the Japanese version,
Right, right. Yeah,
just
yeah,
for the collector, that's something that no one else has this, or very few people have this.
right.
And so even though it may not have uh, monetary value, but it's as you said, it's the connection that it has for the actual collector that makes it valuable.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. But I think a lot of guys are buying it with the hopes of monetary value
Right. Down the line.
down the line. But and I think I'm gonna might be wrong, but I don't think I am. I think the most valuable comic of the last 15 years is that Delato Spider-Man variant, number 667, I believe it
Okay.
is.
Okay.
And I think like a 9.6 Steve or a 9.8 can go for like 15,000 US.
My goodness.
Yeah. And I think the reason why it's the most expensive, I think they did the math, and it might be the rarest of all the variants, the Spider-Man variants, because there's no sexy Mary Jane on the cover. It's kind of like a cool cover, but it's not like it doesn't grab you. Holy moly, look at this cover! Like no huge battle scene, no sexy girl. It's just the Delato variant that I think everybody missed when it came out. There might have been variant fatigue at the time, and just a lot of people didn't participate in that variant. A lot of shops didn't, and I think you kind of when everything sifted, it ended up being the one that nobody could find.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's all you got to tell the collecting community is this is the hardest one to find. And then boom, right? It becomes the one everybody wants, right? And when everybody wants it, the prices go crazy, right? So that is scarcity. So that's an example of it's not even perceived scarcity; it's true scarcity. But it's kind of conditional scarcity. It's scarcity based on the cover being different than the other cover. The book content is the same, right? But when you're talking about collecting, that's basically purely driven on the scarcity of that cover. So,
And I also want to go back to what you said earlier about the character debuts,
yeah.
because the one thing that I noticed about Spider-Man
Mhm.
is they also introduced a plethora of villains
Yeah.
in his run. And you can have someone like Morbius, Hobgoblin, who then through time capture the public's imagination, and then they get their own movies, and then that issue skyrockets.
Yeah. Spider-Man 101 is first Morbius, and that thing's through the roof right now because Morbius is going to be in some sort of film.
It's a great cover too, to be honest with you.
Fantastic. I think Gil Kane did that one.
Yes, yeah. He was always ultra dynamic.
Good. The guys were real muscular.
Yeah, everything was. There's no body fat. Everything was like zero body fat on a Gil Kane.
Frank Zane muscular, not Arnold. Frank Zane. Right?
Yeah.
But it's funny. The character. They often say that you're as a hero, you're as good as your rogues gallery.
Absolutely.
Right. So the two best rogues gallery comics probably belong to Spider-Man and Batman. Now, are Spider-Man and Batman the most popular superheroes in the world? Is that a coincidence? I guess would be my question. My answer would be probably not. Right.
No.
Right. So I remember, Steve, I used to go to in class. Teachers would ask me to do like a history of comics thing, and I would go to grade 4s or grade 6s, and I would always give them this project, right? So, and I would tell them about how superheroes were created for the time. Anti-communist superheroes fighting the Axis, superheroes fighting, radioactive superheroes during the atomic age. And I asked the kids, I go, well, look around you today. What are the world's troubles? So what kind of hero can we create to combat them? And of course, the number one thing would be like some sort of derivative of Enviroman.
Right.
Somebody to help the environment. Global warming and all that kind of stuff. So they get excited about creating like whatever they're creating. Enviroman would be one of them. There were more, but I'll stick to that one. So they get excited when they come up with the concept, but not even near half as excited as when I finished the lesson with, okay, you have your hero. Now let's create a villain for him. Oh my God, the room explodes. Oh my God, we get to create a villain for it, right? And then the mind, everybody's mind is racing. You're coming up with 100 different concepts and stuff. So villains are fun. Villains are cool. Sure. Villains are what makes the hero, right?
Well, think of Star Wars without Darth Vader.
Right. Or Batman without Joker.
Batman without Joker. Yeah. For me, Doc Ock is my favorite Spider-Man villain, right? Abomination for Hulk. Like everyone has to have an opposite.
That's right.
And for me, probably the guy that I enjoy reading the most is probably Doctor Doom.
Right. Yeah.
Considering how things have gone in 2020, you can almost see him being a real life figure someplace.
That's right.
Just,
That's right. Think of all the industrial sabotage and espionage that Disney had to do to get Doc Doom back into their stables.
Oh, for sure.
Because Doc Doom was owned by Fox. And Fox owned the Fantastic Four rights. And I remember as a comic store, 2014, 15, 16, we had a conscious discussion about there's no Fantastic Four title. There's no Fantastic Four title on our New This Week walls. And, we all came to the conclusion that Marvel is starving out Fox. They don't want to even publish a character that can help Fox's stable.
Right.
So they weren't contractually obligated to keep Fantastic Four going while Fox had the rights to Fantastic Four. So they used that lack of being contractually obligated to not put any current product out of that character. So eventually Fox capitulated and says, I'm not sure just because of that. I'm sure they had other avenues that they were going down, but and then when the title went back to Marvel, the whole universe lit up in terms of fans thinking about, oh my God, the number one book that blew up at that time was Fantastic Four #5, which is the first appearance of Doctor Doom, right? That book went from a $2,000 copy became a $5,000 copy overnight. Just ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
That's the power of a good villain. And that's the power of when you know that the studio that owns the rights to it, what can possibly be coming down the future for fans with that villain.
Exactly. And that's the type of villain that is also cross title, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, Joker works that way. Like a lot of Batman's villains get co-opted for other heroes, like
Sure.
Green Lantern, not
Yeah,
Green Lantern, Green Arrow
right.
has a lot of Batman's villains on the
Yep,
CW,
yep.
right? And on the WB network. And a lot of Spider-Man villains become Daredevil villains.
Hmm. Well, the
Um,
number one Daredevil villain started off as a Spidey villain,
yeah, absolutely.
Kingpin.
And I would probably say maybe his number 2 or number 3 villain, the Punisher,
Yeah,
was a Spidey villain too.
that's right. That's right.
You
Yeah.
know, get your own villains, Daredevil. Get your
Yeah,
own
no, hey,
villains.
come on. No, Purple Man. And you have Purple,
But now Jessica Jones took him. So,
right, Stilt Man.
oh yeah.
I
He's
think maybe his Daredevil's number one generic like homegrown villain is probably Bullseye.
for sure.
Yeah,
For sure. Yeah. And then I guess Elektra.
well, Elektra was kind of a love interest. Maybe Silver Samurai. I don't know.
Yeah. Who's the guy who with the chain, not the chain, the blades on his
Gladiator.
is it Gladiator?
I forget.
I can't remember his name.
Whiplash. No, Gladiator.
No.
No.
Whiplash is Iron Man.
Yeah, Whiplash. Iron. Sorry.
Yeah.
That was Mickey Rourke. Sorry.
Interesting
Yeah,
casting. Interesting casting.
Yeah, no, I forget. I know the guy you're talking about. I think it was the Daredevil number 18 or something like that. He was
Yeah.
on. Yeah. I just forget. But you're right. It's all about villains. But
So let me ask you a question. Growing up, and then obviously having a store and looking at like probably more vintage books than some of the creators that were, involved in those books. What for you, or which book for you, or which run or arc for you holds kind of like a special place in your heart?
there's a few. The Galactus trilogy, I
Mm,
think, is the best comic trilogy ever. Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, introduction of Galactus and Silver Surfer, Fantastic Four, just like mind-bogglingly good. I thought. I really loved Born Again, Frank Miller's Daredevil story.
right.
Born
Right.
Again, just like again off the chart type stuff. I liked Batman Year One better than I did Dark Knight. I thought Dark Knight was a little heavy and weighty, and it read more like a novel, whereas Year One read like pure comic book joy. Right? Again, that was Frank Miller.
Yes.
In general, I think Spider-Man is my favorite hero, and not in any particular stories per se, but I like all his stories. I like the way he interacted with snarkasm and humor with the villains, right?
Yeah.
I just, that annoying little pest type of guy, and I really like the humor, the way Spider-Man was written. So that was probably my number one title growing up. And then, believe it or not, I really enjoyed reading Conan, but the magazine.
Yes.
The magazine, black and white. The art was unbelievably good, and the content was a little bit more adulty than the comic was. So I think those were my favorites. So I like specific stories, definitely the Galactus trilogy and Born Again. I enjoyed Alan Moore's stuff. I enjoyed things like when Brubaker was doing Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed. I like writers like Rucka. I like writers like Bendis. A lot of guys don't like Bendis. He took a 2-issue story and made it 8 issues. It's the knock on Bendis, right? He stretched things out. But I liked his pacing. I liked his stuff. But Bendis reads better in a graphic.
Right.
Because you get more to consume there. You just go through one of his comics too quickly. But I like King when he was doing Batman. It's funny. I had in my blog this year, I was talking about comic book values, and I was posting something every week on what this is the thing I'm going to used to make my list, by the way. And I was thinking how odd it is that, this is a Frank Frazetta cover. We're going to buy it, right? This is a J. Scott Campbell cover. We're going to buy it. This is introduction of a villain. We're going to buy it. This is a great battle cover. We're going to buy it, or whatever. There's no monetary value given to writers as a collectible. I mean, nobody ever, when you're buying the old Hulk thing, you're going, man, this is Jim Steranko. Look at this. This is amazing. Nobody says, hey, this was written by Harlan Ellison. I'm going to buy this.
Right.
Nobody. Like, the artist doesn't get any play in terms of collectability, in terms of adding value to the collectible. It's odd, right? Like Denny O'Neil, right? Those are great stories. But the value, Neil Adams brings the story, value. It's odd that pretty well the most important part of the book, the writing, is the
That's
part
the start.
of the book.
That's the start, right?
Pretty well. The collectors overlook who the creator was in terms of the writing aspect.
Yeah, and you think about it, Claremont had an amazing roster of artists to tell his X-Men tale. Right. But you still think of those artists. Yeah.
Byrne.
Right? The Byrne run, right?
Yeah. It's odd. It's something that's not right. But when you look at books that were produced in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, when you look at the little write-ups on whether it's a price guide or whether it's the CGC label, you hardly ever see who it was written by. If that adds value. If there's something special about a book, it'll be because it is a Lou Fine cover or, that kind of thing. So it's
unless you have a dual threat where it's the writer and the artist are the same person.
Same thing, like Frank Miller, right?
Yeah. McFarlane. Yeah.
But it's more from McFarlane's art. But right.
Yeah, well, when you think about it, it's more for his art. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. But it's an injustice that I don't think is going to be addressed anytime soon.
I think it's the case of it being a visual medium.
Yep.
And so, the shine goes to the person that realizes it. It's kind of like I always look at the artist almost as the actor in a film.
Yeah.
So you can watch James Bond.
Yeah.
And there's some people that only love Connery, right?
Right. Yeah.
And Roger Moore, no thank you.
Yeah.
Even though it's the same production house, everything, right? And it's the same thing with certain titles. Like you might have someone who is a McFarlane fan, and they might be an Eric Larson fan, but they're not a Ron Friends fan,
right?
For a Spider-Man run, or Herb Trimpe versus Sal Buscema. Like it's very interesting. Same characters, sometimes same writer, but
You know what character is the most resilient character in the history of comics by tenfold? Is Batman. So what Batman is a vehicle for creative teams, and he's so resilient that you can get like Paul Pope and guys like that do really cool interpretations that do well when they come out. But they're so out in left field for the character, but the character just bounces off it. Like, there's no sacrilege. There's no sacrilege when creative teams come and do Batman. Batman can weather almost anything, right? And it's funny how many world famous creator teams made their name on Batman, right? Batman is like, you might not want to do that with, I don't know, some other lesser characters because, people would cry foul.
Well, I think you've hit a good point there, because you think of Batman. Batman now has probably gone back to his roots, right? Those early books were pretty dark, right?
Yeah.
Noirish. Yep. Then you go into like the 40s and the 50s, and in the 60s, he gets a lot lighter. and then it becomes Ultimate Camp. You have Batmite running around and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And then O'Neill and Adams come along and basically ground it again.
Yeah.
And it's like he's Sherlock Holmes meets James Bond.
Yeah.
You know, really, really, really tight stories, great art.
Yeah.
And then Miller takes him darker.
Yeah.
You know, dystopia future. Yeah. And then since then, we've had a whole bunch of different interpretations of him.
Right. That's right.
And he is the bulletproof character for DC. I agree with you. I don't know. Like, you can't take Superman too dark.
No.
You can't take Spider-Man too dark.
No. They tried it with Old Man Spider-Man. Everybody hated that one. Remember that one?
Yeah. And even when the around the Clone Saga and stuff.
Yeah.
And even some of Straczynski's run was a bit dark. And like, I would say that while Batman is bulletproof, I think that someone like Spider-Man, a character like Spider-Man, people are overly protective of.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're
it's
right.
Like, we want it this way.
Yeah.
And I think maybe Bendis found the magic by, I'm going to give you more Spider-Man stories, but I'm not giving you Peter Parker stories.
Right. I get it. Yep.
Right. And I think that's the way it goes. And I think the hero that has probably survived the most change, which has been built into his personality, has been the Hulk.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's the classic Jekyll and Hyde thing where, I don't know. The thing with the Hulk for me was the Hulk was all about how he was drawn.
Yeah.
More than any other hero, more than any other character. You had to get the Hulk right, or else I didn't agree with the Hulk. Like that oversized lumbering thing that McFarlane did, I didn't like at all. Right, I just didn't like it. And then Deodato, I think, had him where he was massive. Yeah, and that one like I don't want to say it's almost like that Byrne Trimp style of Hulk was my favorite. You know, I don't know. That touch of humanity still, you know, the Jackie Gleason black hair going off to the side. I don't know. But yeah, the Hulk is you had to have him drawn right, or I wasn't into him. It's funny how we're temperamental and we're protective and possessive of our heroes like that. It seems like Batman, you can throw him at me any way you want. I'll give it a go, right?
Oh, for sure. I
mean, you start changing my Hulk and I cry foul. Right? It's weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is strange. Like I even liked King's interpretation of when he had the Joker be Batman.
Right.
Yeah. Like I thought this was fantastic because you know the whole adage of two sides of the same coin kind of thing.
Right.
And I thought that was a really, really, really great story. But I don't know if you could do that. Like I know they kind of did it with Spider-Man when they had him die with Superior Spider-Man, but it doesn't work the same. Like because you eliminated Peter out of the equation anyway, right? Peter's every man. Yeah. And that's what connects you to that character. Batman is almost aspirational, but so wounded that you get it. And he's all about vengeance. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It's funny, in terms of alter egos, we're talking about that. You know, there are, it's funny, Peter, though, is the one that we've successfully branched off of. Think about 20 years ago, somebody telling you there's going to be a successful Spider-Man that's not Peter Parker.
Right.
We'd all say, right? That's not happening, but it's happening, right? But they're really, we can't seem to get away from Bruce Wayne from our Batman in any kind of sticking long-term thing that seems viable.
Yeah, and I think why we can't is because what made Bruce is intrinsic to him.
Right.
And then everyone else plays off of that. So you've got Nightwing and Barbara and Jim and anyone else who kind of falls into the Bat family. But the thing that makes Peter kind of connect with his audience is that he could be anyone. And I think that's what Spider-Verse got right.
Right. I guess you're right.
Right? Parker could be any one of us gender, shade, whatever.
Yep.
And then it's how do you deal as being the everyman? Because not everyone has a violent beginning to their
That's right.
to their life, right? That then determines how they play out. And then you're lucky enough to be a billionaire. So as terrible as Bruce's origin is, he does have certain comforts that allow him to manage what he has to do in his later life. But Parker is just struggling, trying to make rent.
Yep.
And when he does stuff, it goes wrong. Like I don't think there's really a Bruce Wayne
Right.
in Batman. Batman's Batman.
Right.
Spider-Man is whomever puts on that mask, but is dealing with real life stuff.
And you're right. Through the mask of Spider-Man, you see Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And the mannerisms and the struggles. But through the cowl, you don't see Bruce Wayne. All you see is Batman, in a way. I mean,
and he's repressed too, right?
Yeah,
repressed rage, repressed angst, anger, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
And I think that's why the Hulk's popular, because the Hulk allows everyone to kind of just go nuts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You get mad, Hulk out, man. And people like
nice,
to see
wouldn't
that. Without all the damage, yeah. Because the taxes wherever he is, it's just terrible.
I know. Tell me about it.
Well, Walt, this has been great. I had a fun time chatting comics and reconnecting again. Where can people find you to learn more about Big B and also Ice?
Big B, I think we're at bigbcomics.com. Just the letter B. Ice is icomicexchange.com. I was going to say you could run into us at a show, but we can't, can we? Our shop is in Hamilton on Upper James, 1045 Upper James, and we're still open. We love the medium. We love what we do. It's a fun thing. I like all the people I meet, and it's a good thing about comic collecting and comic. It seems to attract a positive group. And people come to the store. It's funny when you go into a comic store, and I'm sure not just ours. When you go into a comic store on a Wednesday, you get, pardon the Beach Boy phrase, but you get good vibrations coming out of there. Every single person in there wants to be in there. They couldn't wait. They couldn't wait to get there. And once they're there, they're in a place that they really like, and it's a place that exudes so much positive energy. And we like that. We're going to keep it going. And thanks to you, we're spreading the word.
Oh, no, thank you. Thanks for stopping by and spending some time with us and being able to chat. And I look forward to those opportunities again to kind of walk in through the store, enjoy, hanging out with you guys, and then also running into you guys at shows.
All right, Steve. Thank you.
All right. You take care.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And once again, a special thank you to Walter Durajlija. We look forward to your comments, so reach out to us on Facebook and at Comics Asylum on Instagram and Twitter.